Hey, this is Victor, co-founder of Litewater Scientific. And if you're looking to be better in health and learn more about biohacking, then you should be listening to the Hack Life podcast with Joe Levin.
Hey, what's up? Joel Levin here, host of the Hack Life podcast and weight loss coach for busy men. I'm excited to tell you I just dropped an 8-week program dedicated to motivated and busy men who want to lose weight. Let's face it, guys, when you lose weight, you feel more confident and you have higher self-esteem and you go out and you crush the world. You crush your goals and you start living your higher purpose. So if you're interested, DM me at Joel Levin Coaching or email me below, info@joellevincoaching.com.
All right, I'm here with Victor Sagalovsky. He's a holistic health educator, scientist, inventor, writer, filmmaker, and avid traveler. He's also the co-founder of Litewater Scientific, which is what we're going to talk about today, and he's dedicated to the research and development of that company, and specifically Deuterium Depleted water. Victor, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you.
Hey,
thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
We appreciate you. Hey, just to start things off, you know, deuterium depleted water. First of all, nobody knows what that is. But so how did you get involved in deuterium depleted water, deuterium at all? Like, how did you become like fascinated with this and be like, you know what, I want to go down the rabbit hole and yeah, I'm going to make this like a part of my mission in my life to like bring this to the world?
It's a great opening question. Well, actually it goes back to 2004. Probably before that, in the 90s, there was a book I'll talk about later. But in 2004, I read an article. It was called In Search of the Fountain of Youth. And it was this NASA engineer that had written an article based on things that he found, reference material on Eastern Europe, on them discovering this phenomenon where when the population is reduced, where the water that you drink is reduced in deuterium by 16 to 20%, it has a profound biological benefit. So this was a study that was first done in late 50s in Siberia in Russia, University of Tomsk. So with these guys, there was some young gerontologists and biophysicists there, and they're trying to figure out why this population of Yakutians, okay, they live in an area it's like the farthest you can be from healthcare. It's like 8 months out of the year. It's black, dark. What else? The most non-Mediterranean diet. They're basically Eskimos, right?
Yeah.
They live in a harsh environment, and yet they had 4 times more centenarians than anywhere else in Soviet Russia. They had profound health. They were giving birth to later age, which is a great sign of a healthy population. And they were trying to figure out why these people, right? And this stumped them, and it took them a few years to figure it out, because at that time in the 50s, deuterium was something that had only been discovered in the 30s. So you just put yourself in the perspective of the time that you're in. And deuterium is do you know what deuterium is? I guess I have to ask you first.
I could, if you asked me, I couldn't. I know it has to do with hydrogen, and I read.
Yeah, it's like somewhere back in science, right?
It's on the periodic table, maybe. Now,
you read the periodic table, you saw it once, and you go, okay, that's good. That's
it makes
nice.
hydrogen bombs. That's the last thing I remember.
Yeah, if it wasn't for the discovery of deuterium, we wouldn't have atomic energy. So what deuterium is just a version of hydrogen. Okay, so hydrogen is the simplest element and the most abundant element in the universe. It's what everything is made up of, and it's what we use as the primary fuel to create the ATP that is the currency of our biology, right? The energy currency. So deuterium is different than hydrogen, though. Even though it is a hydrogen, what makes it hydrogen? Well, it will bond with oxygen to create water, and so will regular hydrogen. But what's the difference about deuterium? Deuterium has a neutron. Why the universe loves protium, which is the original form of hydrogen, the non-deuterium hydrogen. So why does the universe love hydrogen, and why do we use it, and why does everything use it? Well, because it's so simple. It doesn't have a neutron. It's the most simplest element. It's a proton and an electron, right? But deuterium introduces a neutron, which all other elements on the periodic table have, and they're basically and they're basically what they are is based on their neutrons. So you have this neutron in a hydrogen where hydrogen is not supposed to have a neutron. What happens? It makes it twice the weight of what it is. So biologically, this becomes a problem because everything in your body that thinks it's getting a hydrogen sometimes is getting a deuterium. We can get into the actual biochemistry of this like later. So this, when I first read this in 2004, it was like a revelation for me because I thought, well, if something is, this is, I'm always looking for foundational answers to life's problems, especially health and aging. So always ask the question, why do we age? What's the mechanism of it? And it has to do a lot with mitochondria. And then I found something that is potentially like this fountain of youth, as it's called in the article. And then it wasn't until a few years later, 2007, that a scientist, doctor, researcher in Turkey, a colleague of mine now, that he discovered the exact mechanism how deuterium damages the mitochondria. It's all right there. It's the physical problem of this thing is twice the size of a regular hydrogen. And we have these little tiny nanomotors that produce all the ATP that we need to breathe, to run, to eat, to live. And the less you have of these nanomotors, the less energy you have. The more compromised they are, the more disease happens in the body, the more disease manifests, the more you have a dysbiotic condition. So what happens is these motors, they spin and create ATP based on protons coming in, right? Hydrogen, boom, 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 spin, 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 produce ATP, move on, and metabolic water, produce metabolic water, which, by the way, is already 60 to 70% depleted. So there's a clue that tells you our bodies are trying to keep these things out of the motors. But inadvertently, and from the time we're born to the time we're dead, nonstop, these motors are getting hit by this deuterium. And it's causing them to stutter and torque. And these motors are spinning at 9,000 RPM at perfect translation. Our F1 automobiles can't even do that. So this is something quite profound happening on the nanomolecular level inside our own body, inside the energy factories of our cells, mitochondria. So when these motors break down, eventually a signal is sent to basically kill the mitochondria, to go into senescence and apoptosis, kill the cell. First destroy the mitochondria in the cell as a protective mechanism. So when you're 10 years old, maybe a cell has 100,000 mitochondria, and when you're 70 or 80, maybe it has like 1,000, 500, or maybe that cell is no longer there because it shut itself down because it didn't want to become a dysbiotic organism to affect everything else. And you trace it to the root, and you find the root is this little hydrogen that just happens to be twice the weight of a regular hydrogen, and it screws everything up. And this is happening. This is cumulative. So when I first learned about this, stop everything. We really have to get down to the bottom of this. So for a number of years, I tried to figure out, well, how do you get it out of water? How do you reduce water in deuterium? Because this is obvious. This is the obvious answer. Drink water with lower deuterium. You're going to, through the mechanism of hydrogen exchange, you're going to start flushing endogenous deuterium out. And let me back up a little bit. So this doctor, Dr. Olgun, in Turkey, he discovered how deuterium damages the mitochondria. But what made him look at it in the first place? Why? When you consider how much deuterium you have, maybe this glass of water has like 2 or 3 drops, okay? And it's deuterium in the form of HDO. So it's very similar. It's almost very similar to a water molecule. And there's so little of it, just almost nothing, right? But then he looked at the blood. He looked at the blood plasma. And he saw that there was 4 to 5 times more of this deuterium than the basic biological components that we need for life: glucose, magnesium, potassium, etc. So he says, wow, there's a lot of it here. And what is it doing? And he says, oh, well, it's damaging stuff. What it's doing is it's making reactions slower. So through the kinetic isotope effect, you've come to find out that a carbon deuterium bond disassociates 9 times slower than a carbon hydrogen bond. Imagine that. So what is deuterium doing? It's slowing things down. It's breaking things down. It's burdening things down. What does the removal of deuterium do? It's quickening things up. It's lightening things up, right? It's speeding things up. It's creating less of a burden on your biology. So, so when we look at this nano level, you see where the problem is. And so for years I tried to figure out how to remove this deuterium from water myself. And when I went to Russia, I realized that I wasn't even close, you know. It just was not. I wasn't anywhere near the ballpark. I read stuff like you could freeze it out, you could do all that stuff. And eventually, you know, when I got to learn a lot about it over the next 15 years, you know, I learned that you can freeze it. In fact, you could do, there's a technique where you, because water and heavier water has a slightly different freezing point, like a half a degree difference. You say, well, what has more deuterium in it will freeze it, will be at the top first. And so you could do this, you could freeze it, you know, get the top ice, remove that, put it back in, freeze it again, remove it. You could do it 20 times, you might get like 0.5%, half a ppm, not a percent, sorry, half a ppm, half a part per million. So in our on the planet, in our waters, you know, in the ocean, we have a deuterium level of 155.76 ppm deuterium. And it fluctuates based on the hydrological cycle with fresh water. So most people drink water that's 150 parts per million of deuterium, depending where you're at. In some places where you're away from the oceanic currents and hydrological cycles, if you're in a northern latitude or if you're in a glacier area, you might get down to as low as, you know, upper 120s. Usually, like some places in Colorado, you're getting into the upper 130s, which is phenomenal. Other places you can naturally get into the mid 130s, but usually not where big populations of people are. And then, of course, in Antarctica, we have this anomaly, which is a throwback to what the Earth was like 50 million years ago. It's like 89 parts per million. So if you think back to your science classes where we studied dinosaurs and five-story tall ferns, you'll come to find out that these animals were able to, and plants were able to get this big because there was less deuterium on the planet. More oxygen as well, different gravitational field, but primarily less deuterium. So the less deuterium you have, the lighter things are. And you can see that in nature too, where deuterium concentrates in the roots of things, in the carbohydrates, and it leaves. And if you're in the top canopy of a tree, you'll have less deuterium than you will at the roots. It's very simple. It's just heavier. So it has that kind of energy on us. So I was fascinated with this because this is an upstream solution. It's an upstream solution to potential many problems downriver. And so I got into this. And when I went to Russia, I realized how they do it, how difficult it is, how much it took to create it, the science behind it, all these things. And then I really just dove into this. And finally, we were able to get to the point where we can produce a limited quantity of this water and make it available to the market. So, and this brings us to the present day.
Yeah, that's fascinating. You know, I was just thinking as you're telling this story, so, okay, this is amazing. Like, deuterium is clearly an issue in our overall health and longevity. So if I just start drinking deuterium depleted water, am I going to be good? Or, like, does things like a healthy diet, does all these things still matter? Or is this like just just drink deuterium depleted water and you're good, Joel?
It's an incredible way to cheat. I'm not going to lie to you.
Cool. That's
it
good.
Really
That's
is.
good to know.
I mean, I used to, before getting on deuterium depleted water, I'm a consummate health nut, right?
Yeah.
All the way to the point of dry fasting, 144 hours without food and water to deplete my deuterium, because you will deplete deuterium endogenously through fasting and ketogenic diet. Fats have less deuterium. And then when you burn your fat to make water, you're making metabolic water. So you're lowering the deuterium even more. So you don't need to do a lot of things that you need to do to maintain health if you're drinking deuterium depleted water. Now, that's not to say that you can't become deuterium depleted or in an optimal state of deuterium depletion without drinking deuterium depleted water. You can. It's a lot harder. It's like you said, there's lifestyle modifications, and it's really reserved for those people that have that interest and discipline.
Yeah.
So, but this is just a simple, easy hack that, it's the ultimate hack. Why? Because
Seriously.
10 parts per million deuterium depleted water, as far as we know, never existed on this planet. Maybe if you go back to Atlantis or some ancient antediluvian civilizations we know nothing about, you might get to a folk tale about something, but no, it's never existed on this planet that we know of. The lowest is 89 parts per million. So what we're doing is we're really creating a hack, and we're doing it at the source. We're doing it at the very source of the problem, instead of trying to treat it downstream as people do with supplements and food and things like that. Just consider there's nothing else that will give you a net energy benefit than the removal of deuterium from your body. Because everything you eat, everything you put in your body will ultimately not only introduce deuterium in your body, but introduce carbon that has to be dealt with itself. So everything ultimately isn't maybe an electron donor, but it's an energy taker in the long run. This is the deuterium depletion. Maybe sunlight, right? Maybe sunlight is the other one. And but deuterium depleted water is the only thing, or the act of deuterium depletion through the ingestion of deuterium depleted water and the removal of deuterium through the mechanism of hydrogen exchange, to put it technically, is the only thing that will give you a net energy benefit. So knowing this information, I started this company with my partner, Robert Slovak, who's a water guru, and in 40 years of him being a water guru, he was one of the original creators of reverse osmosis technology, and at the home level and at the commercial level around the world. And even he says, in 40 years of dealing with the practical aspects of water filtration to the esoteric science of water, never did he discover, up until very late in the game, that there was something known as deuterium that needed to be removed from water. So essentially what we have here is a new standard in water filtration. Yeah. If you want to look at it as simply as it is, it's a new standard. Deuterium is a contaminant, get it out. You don't even need to remove that much, 15, 20%, you're golden. So when we start removing, what we did it because we can, and it ships easier, and we're doing an experiment. We've never had this type of access to something that can increase proton motive force and potentially increase our lifespan. We've never had it until now. So here I am, standing on the shoulders of giants, and I'm glad to be sharing it with you, Joe.
Yeah, this is awesome. Man, I have so many questions. So one is, how can people deplete their? I know you mentioned ketogenic diet. Any other big ideas that pop out at you? If you're not going to use the deuterium depleted water, is clearly the fastest way, and it's going to be the quickest way to
absolutely.
But what other ways can people, lifestyle wise?
Yes, no, this is a great topic because we have mechanisms in our body naturally that work to limit the amount of deuterium that enters the electron transport chain, and work to limit deuterium's mutagenic quality to mutate our enzymes and our DNA. There's processes in place that we have, and these processes were set up over millions of years of evolution. And the problem is these processes break down. In fact, there's a new science called deuteronomics. Deuteronomics is the study of how deuterium manages the body. It's a word coined by Dr. Laszlo Boros of UCLA, and he was at our summit. We did a summit for this year where it was a 10-hour summit on the science of deuteronomics, and we had 10 of the top scientists in the world on this, which is a new field. Most people haven't heard of it, but it's trying to understand how the body and how nature manages deuterium. Yeah. So the problem that people have gotten themselves into is, two problems the way I see it. Simple problems. Too many meals a day. We're not used to this. Traditionally, we're not meant to eat this much. Based for the calorie expenditure that most people give. You can defend 3 meals a day if you are exercising a lot. Secondly is carbohydrates. We're not meant to eat too many carbs. So if you can if you can get your fats grass-fed, they're not high in omega-6. They're actually in it's close to a state of nature as it was intended. Then you have a chance to be healthy and be deuterium depleted and live long and healthy life. It helps to be living somewhere where the deuterium content of your drinking water is just slightly reduced. You know, like even a 5% delta is huge over time.
Yeah.
Cumulative. These people that live in, you could see it. Like if you go to Boulder, Colorado, for example, there the tap water is 139. Okay, and sure enough, people love to live there because they love to be active. They love to go outdoors. It's where the Olympians train.
Yep.
And they don't really realize why. It's because they have slight drop in deuterium levels, and even at like I said, a 5% delta over time, that slight variance gives an incredible, tremendous result. So these are some of the ways, even without drinking deuterium clear water, that you can maintain a healthy deuterium depleted lifestyle.
Yeah, that's huge. Thanks for sharing that. You know, one of the things as you're talking too, it just made me realize, and it's one of the philosophies that I have just in my own health coaching, is that once you balance the body, right? And in a sense with deuterium, that's what you're doing. So like I'm thinking like anybody that has a sickness or an illness or an autoimmunity, whatever, that's just an imbalance in the body. And by restoring the mitochondria at that root level like you're doing, I'm assuming you probably see people just, I'm assuming they get better from autoimmune issues. I mean, sicknesses and illnesses and whatever it was, headaches probably.
Everything on that chart goes green.
Yeah.
It all goes green. So
do you have
that's obviously a little over generalization, but if I were to get into the specifics, then it would be we don't share our testimonials because they're too good.
Oh man.
But it's not,
okay,
it's not the...
Can you share one or is there any one that like stands out for you, like a testimonial that we were like, wow, like I knew it was powerful.
There are, but I can't. I really just privately I'll tell you. You know,
okay.
I'm trying to think of. Here, here's one that's profound, and I can share this one because this is actually I got back from Russia and I came back with the two big. Did a bunch of studies there, but this was paid for by my partner, sponsored by him. And a number of years ago.
Victor, is Russia just one of the only places that's really embracing deuterium depleted water and this kind of philosophy with health? I'm just, because you mentioned it many times, and it seems like that's where
the technology was, the original research was in Russia, so some of the original Soviet bloc countries also got into this, so Romania and Hungary. Hungary, and Russia, and now China makes some DDW as well.
Okay.
But primarily the science comes from Russia, Hungary, and Romania.
Yeah.
And and Ukraine as well. Not so much in the last 30 years, but when it was still part of the Soviet Union. So and then there was something here in the 70s, in the 60s and 70s. They were really starting to get keen on it here in the United States. I'll give you a good example. There was a conference in 1973, and it was a conference on physics and isotopes. And deuterium came up, and so there was a scientist by the name of Griffiths, and he postulated that, well, here you have something twice the size of hydrogen. Twice the size, yes, we can all agree on that. This is true. Okay, well, if you have DNA, which is made up primarily of hydrogen, if you've got a couple places where instead of that hydrogen you've got something twice the size, it's going to distort the shape of it. Yeah, well, which will lead to errors in transcriptions and mutation. Right, it will. Okay, good, that's settled then. Next.
Yeah.
And that was and part of the reason for that mentality is that there was no water available to do studies with or test with. Even in the 90s, I talked to people that were, found out about this early, and they were trying to get deuterium depleted water, and they would see it was like $1,000 a liter,
Wow.
because this was not something that was easily produced, and it's still not. We just have a more industrial scale process. So. And so this becomes very interesting. The story gets even wilder because in the 70s and in the early 90s, there were a couple of people that they claimed to have contact with ETs, UFOs, extraterrestrials. It's recorded. Another guy wrote a book about it, and in this book, written in 1994, he claims to have asked these. In his particular case, he had telepathic communication with these ETs, and I remember reading this book, and he goes, and he asked the ETs, well, why do you guys look so young and look so old? You know, you guys are like 1,500 years old or something. He's like, yeah. And the answer, which was like, you know, a decade or more before anybody started, you know, looking at, in the Western world, started looking at this seriously, scientifically. The extraterrestrials said, "Oh, sorry, I'm really sorry for you guys because you have too much of what's known as deuterium on your planet." So, and this was so I catch these little things in books I read. I go,
So
okay,
interesting,
this is left field stuff, you know. And then you find the science. So, so when I found the science, and we found somebody as crazy as us that was actually trying to make this stuff, and had gotten to the point where they could produce enough of it to actually market it and sell it. You know, we believe in the science, and I had never even tried deuterium depleted water, or maybe like, you know, maybe a bottle, but the concept is you have to drink it over time to get your levels down.
Yeah.
And I am so thrilled because after 3 months of being on it, I can tell you I couldn't be more pleased because the science did not let me down. The science proved it right, and it's mitochondrial science. Okay, it's just simple term that most people never heard in their lives, but they might. And I hope it starts things spinning in the back of your head, and that term is proton motive force. And that's what is increased when you deplete your proton motive force. Theoretically goes up to 6 times more. In practice, about twice. And that's what I was saying. I got back from Russia with these studies, and what these studies show, you asked me, give me a testimonial. This is where the question came. And in these studies, they showed with athletes and people that are not athletes, they showed the same thing, that after 30 days of drinking deuterium depleted water, of 30 days of deuterium depletion, when they're being exercised or they're exercising, they need half the amount of oxygen to perform the same amount of work.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That right there, you know, you read things like this, and you read the studies, you get into it, and then you go, where else can I see this in nature? And you can. You go to the Himalayas, you go to Mount Everest, and you see all these Westerners, with the exception of a few that have acclimated there, climbing up to the Mount Everest with supplemental oxygen. Mm-hmm. But then you have these Sherpas that go up and down all day long, and they don't need any supplemental oxygen. So you're in a hypoxic environment at 26,000 feet.
Yeah.
Normal person doesn't have enough oxygen to survive. They'll start shutting down. And these guys are running up and down like they're going to
just walking
going
the
to Whole
dog.
Foods
Yeah.
or something.
Going to Whole Foods, yeah.
So and why? And the answer is right there. It's right there in the water they drink. The people that live there, and the glacial water they drink there, it's like 129 parts per million. And over time you get acclimated to that. And these studies back that up. Is that when you are deuterium depleted, now we don't know yet by how much, but there's a certain amount of deuterium depletion, and we know 133 is the first biological benefit, and these people are drinking 129 ppm for an extended period of time, and they're able to climb Mount Everest without supplemental oxygen.
Wow.
And these studies back that up, that after 30 days of deuterium depletion, you need half the amount of oxygen to promote to perform the same amount of work. And every time I say this, I get chills. Okay, I get goosebumps, because I don't see anything else in nature that is going to do this type of service for you. So that's why I got so excited about this. Stopped everything I was doing and really dove into this head first.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. And Okay, so on that note, I know for you guys, I think on your website, you guys actually people can test their deuterium, and then over time they can actually order the light water and get better. I'm curious, so for the average person that you see, because I'm sure you see a lot of tests come through, what's the average, person? What's their deuterium levels, and then what's a healthy level?
Most people are going to be very close to the water that they consume. And so most people are about 150, some people are in the low 140s, which is phenomenal. But then you see this pattern of people that are over 150, like 155, 156, 157, and those are people that usually have chronic health conditions. And people that are in the low 140s pretty much are very healthy. Upper 130s, I've seen it, but it's pretty rare to come at this endogenously. But most people, on the average, are about 150. And your goal is to just go down by 15-20%.
Okay.
That's the quick fix. And the key is you just stay there. This is cumulative. You've spent your whole life accumulating deuterium. Now you're gonna spend some time keeping those levels lower. What happens is profound. You open up an incredible amount of energy, mitochondrial energy. So what happens? Well, that's going to manifest differently for everybody. Everybody, we're all alike, but not two people, or we're all the same, but not two people are alike. How does that go? So because we're all different, how that energy manifests in the body is going to be different, And for me, it manifested like I got injured. Like I didn't really see it because I'm pretty healthy. I live at a higher elevation. I exercise a lot.
Yeah.
So I eat clean. I fast, I sweat, and then I go for months on end coasting and doing nothing. But for me, I was very healthy. So where the deuterium depletion manifested for me was when I got injured, and when ice skating, and took a tumble and hurt myself pretty bad. And I noticed that I'm almost 50 years old and I'm healing like I'm 13 years old. It just brought back a memory I hadn't had since that time, because we just forget about these things. We take them for granted. As we age, it takes longer to heal. Things take recovery is a longer process.
Oh yeah.
So I go, wow, this is something profound. I healed from this injury faster than I would have last year. In fact, quite significantly faster than I would have the year before as a generally healthy individual. So to answer your question, people test out at about 150 average. Then we do have a service, deuteriumtest.com. We put a lab together, and this lab tests saliva and water. And the goal is to get down. 133 is the first biological benefit.
Okay.
I recommend, and if it was me, I would go down to around 120 and stay in the 120. That's very functional, and considering that the people that live in these areas where they're in the low 130s their entire lives, we're not. So let's play a little catch up, get down to 120s, stay there, and see it. Just experience the difference. Some people feel it right away, which I find strange and unusual, because they'll drink it for one day and they'll get that initial deuterium drop, which is very interesting because it's never happened. Something you go your entire life, maybe make it to 60, 70, 80 years old, and you've never had the experience unless you went without food or fasting, or got in a ketogenic state. You never had the experience of your deuterium levels actually going reverse, actually dropping.
Yeah.
So some people that are very subtly attuned pick up on that like right away, which is shocking to me, because others, it's very gradual. They don't really see it. Others, within a month, they're like bouncing off the walls. Like they're like, this is incredible.
Okay, so I'm not going to give it to my kids. Good, thanks for letting me know.
No, in fact, don't.
Yeah.
Don't. I mean, of a selfish need for yourself.
Yeah.
I gave it to some animals, okay, and we had to back down because they just get too rambunctious. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of energy to deal with. It's a lot of energy. So you can now kids that grow up in this environment that have slightly lower deuterium levels, they're drinking water that's like in the 130s. You see this. You see the studies, and there's even multi-generational multi-generational studies now. It's something.
Yeah.
It really is. This is a science that is firmly rooted now, even though most people don't know about it, and it's going to grow a big tree of understanding for everybody.
Yeah, it seems like just a good idea. And on that note, I'm gonna order the test. I want to see what my levels are at, and then I'm thinking. I mean, my guess is a 3-month protocol, and I just want to see.
Where are you located?
I'm here right now in Idaho, but I'm going back and forth from California to Idaho.
So Idaho is fantastic spring water there in certain places. I've tested all the way down to 136 parts per million. Just make sure you have the water in Idaho thoroughly tested, because some of it has a little bit of uranium in it too.
Yes. Okay. Cool.
So if you glow, you will glow a little bit.
But it sounds like, just doing like a yearly deuterium depletion would probably be like good for everybody, just like a 3-month reset. Is that like a maintenance kind of
Absolutely.
Seems like
Absolutely. We're gonna have a 3-month reset program. It's interesting you say that. In fact, the original studies show that 1 week out of a month has profound biological benefit as well.
Wow. Okay.
So I think, from an experiential standpoint, the advice that I would give is to maintain it.
Yeah.
Even if it's experiment. I went down all the way to the 80 ppm level, and it's difficult to maintain. It's difficult to maintain, and it's an enormous amount of energy. So you should be a grounded individual.
Yeah.
First and foremost, because it's real. And the reality is when you free up the energy, when you free up the burden on the mitochondria, they just spin up. So, and then you might get into something like mitogenesis, where you actually start growing new mitochondria, which is what we all want. We all want to arrest aging and put it in jail for life and live a long, healthy lifespan, but maintain our youth throughout our entire lives. And I think this and some other modifications make that possible. I certainly see it with a number of people.
Yeah, I mean, just like that study you said, the 50% less oxygen. I mean, that's huge.
It's massive. We want to recreate this study in the U.S. So hopefully this year or the next 12 months, we'll do that here as well, with a larger group. This was done on six people that were drinking as much as they wanted, 6 people that were drinking a certain amount, and 6 people that were drinking just straight, regular, normal water. And these studies were done on athletes, 18 athletes and 18 just regular people. So it's really amazing. So
I just
I'm excited because I'm like living the dream now. I'm deuterium depleted, and I have this.
You need a shirt
I have
that
this,
says
I
that.
have this energy. I have this
I'm
energy to share this
deuterium
with people.
depleted. That needs to be a T-shirt, Victor. I'm deuterium depleted. I work with a lot of weight loss clients. I would imagine that this would be huge for them too, don't you think? Just doing adding this simple hack.
Deuterium depletion increases metabolism. Like I could eat a lot right now. I'm like back to the point where I was like 18, eating like 3,000-4,000 calories at a sitting, and it just burns up like.
Okay, very
it's
cool.
Really metabolic. It's a metabolic solution, right?
Yeah.
So if you want to increase the metabolism, you will do it, and there's probably a direct correlation of deuterium level to metabolism as well.
Yeah.
We'll find what that is, but it works.
Yeah, very cool. I had a quick last question on deuterium. I mean, I think I got a really good idea. I'm curious. I heard, Dave Asprey, who's always checking out all the various hacks and stuff. I think Luke Story was talking to him about deuterium depletion, and he said something like, "Yeah, I looked into it. It doesn't seem like it's that great." I mean, I'm not trying to start anything between, but I'm just curious. Like, what do you think the naysayers are? I'm kind of surprised.
I've gotten things like, this is not sustainable because you're shipping water from Russia. You know, I have answers to all these things, but I've gotten that one. I've gotten the well, you can do it naturally. You shouldn't.
That doesn't seem possible.
You should get everything from where you are locally. Like, yeah, these are great ideals. I mean, it's great to be idealistic in things, but it's also good to be very practical. So I think Dave will come around.
Yeah.
You know,
It makes a lot of sense to me.
I was doing biohacking, from 15 years before Dave. I'm not a self promoter.
Yeah.
I'm a researcher.
Yeah.
So I think he'll come around. Well, I mean, what he discovered in a sense is deuterium depletion, because he started promoting bulletproof coffee, right? That was his original claim to fame. And why do these people put fat into their coffee? Well, because it's a keto strategy.
Yeah.
And the keto strategy is a deuterium depletion strategy. It's the reason why we go keto is because it depletes deuterium, even though people don't realize that's the ultimate benefit, because you're creating metabolic water. And the metabolic water that you have inside of your cells, in the intermembrane spaces, in the matrix, is not water that your body drank. It's water that your body made. Okay? It made it through the process of breaking down all food, essentially back into hydrogen. And that hydrogen, as a proton, spins the motor, which creates ATP and metabolic water. This metabolic water is 60 to 70% deuterium depleted. So anybody that says, yeah, I looked into it, it's not much, they should really look into the biochemistry and biophysics of this actual thing. Not to mention what happens at the quantum tunneling level. So a little knowledge is a dangerous thing, and even worse, a little knowledge gets you nowhere. So we have to constantly strive to improve our data set of because it's not only enough to have information, but even more importantly, you have to ask the right question, right? So when you ask the right questions, then you can start looking for the answers. So I think people will start in the biohacking space will start asking the right questions very soon, and I'm actually giving them the questions. So
yeah, I'm excited, man. I'm excited to try it myself.
I mean, seriously, I'm really trying to be humble about this, but when it comes to knowledge, if it's true and real and authentic, I will tell you what exactly is true. Because I'm trying to save people time. I've spent 20 plus years at this and trying to make a simple understanding of a complex problem, and I have some of the answers. Please take it.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to try and get my levels tested here shortly, and maybe we'll come back on and do a quick just recap and see what happened, because I know there's going to be some good things.
But I value what people say. It's like, why are we hearing about this now? Why we've evolved for millions of years. It's been 1.4 billion years since the mitochondria took residence in our bodies. So wow, all of a sudden we got this other contaminant, and I got to pay exorbitant amount of money for water now. Yeah, people get a little upset about new information like this, but the reality is that our deuterium levels on this planet have been going up, and just the most simplest, most profound health intervention you could do is just lower it by 15 to 20%. And then it actually becomes quite affordable. It becomes cheaper than a cup of coffee a day. The only problem is we're running out.
I wanted to switch gears because you guys have some other amazing products like Quinton minerals and molecular hydrogen. Is that good to go, or did you anything else you wanted to say or talk about deuterium?
I could talk about it all day long.
I
think I got my point across.
I think so. Yeah. I appreciate it. I wanted to talk to you, just about the Quinton minerals. That's something I've been adding this year myself, and I was just blown away. I mean, again, you think, and if you're watching a video, you can see Victor's holding up a vial.
It's like jewelry, right?
I love those things, by the way. I love the little glass vials. It's
like having jewelry.
But yeah, there's so many mineral products out there, and then not only that, but it seems like the Quinton minerals they're just different. They have some real profound health benefits, and I was just curious if you could. I started adding them to my water. We actually fill our reverse osmosis water in a tank in a vat, and then I a pitcher, and then I pour the minerals in there, and so I can have that. And I've been loving them. So,
Have you also studied where they come from and what they are? Or?
I believe that now they're coming off somewhere off of like France, right out there off the coast there, and there was.
So René Quinton, he's the one that started this. I think over 120 years ago, something like 1889, I think, and he said something very, very clever. I never forgot when I read it when I first read it in a book was. Life, which started in the ocean, right? In order for it to survive and succeed on land, it had to take the ocean with it. So this is the closest thing there is to our blood. Has the almost exact identical mineral configuration as our blood, and that's not something earth-shattering because our blood is basically just seawater, right? Seawater is a nutrient of life, and so is our blood. So now, what makes this different from other seawater? Because you could say, "Oh, I'm just going to drink a bunch of ocean water, and that'll give me the same benefit." Well, this is different because you have mineral and element, and the difference between a mineral is that it's attached to a carbon, which makes your body be able to use it, makes it bioavailable. An element you can't use because if you could use an element, you'd be a plant and you'd be able to eat dirt and get some benefit from dirt. But we can't eat dirt. We have to eat something that's been digested by a plant to attach to the carbon, so it's bioavailable. And that's what this is because it comes from these plankton blooms. So it's these vortex plankton blooms, very ancient, that occur in certain parts of on the planet in the ocean, and these basically digest the ocean water around it and create this marine plasma, and that's what this is. It's highly filtered. As you know, ocean water is 3.3x salinity, and our blood is 0.9. Okay, so 0.9 is there's two types. There's the isotonic and the hypertonic. So the hypertonic is a 3.3. which is the same salinity as ocean water, and the 0.9 is the same salinity as your blood, which is what the word isotonic means. Mm-hmm. So you have isotonic and hypertonic, and they act slightly differently. The isotonic is able to easily get into the cell because it's the same exact not only mineral content, but it's the same salinity. So. And the hypertonic it's just an extracellular fluid more, but that's more in the use protocol of these things. So that's what makes it so profound. Is it's really a bioavailable supplement, blood supplement essentially. This is the periodic table of elements in a vial. That's closely matches your own blood profile. In fact, they did experiments where they transfused dogs, poor animals, unfortunately, because they totally took out their blood and replaced it with isotonic marine plasma, and they didn't die.
Wow.
They didn't die. They were able to transfuse their body. In World War I and World War II, this was used as instead of blood plasma for transfusion, and it still can be. So that's what makes this so profound, and that's why this is a product that's been around for almost 130 years, and it's simple. Again, it's foundational. It's salt water, but it's a very specific, detailed type of salt water. Just like, hey, it's just water. It's a very specific type of water. So this is where it's important that you make it to the very source of knowledge.
When would someone use the isotonic versus the hypertonic? Is there one better than the other?
There's actually quite a lot written on this, and I would, if anybody wants to know this, I would kind of steer them in the direction of actually reading more about it. But like I said, the isotonic is more. It gets into the cell easier, so it's more for homeostatic balance.
Okay.
And hypertonic is more for extra energy. You know, it's a boost because it's a hyper salinity. So it actually, it's, you know, this is, you got to look at everything in terms of electrons, right? More electrons, more energy. The question is, do you have the receptors for that energy to process it further and down the line? You can have a bunch of power in the engine, but if your transmission's broken, it's not going to make it to the wheels.
Yeah. Okay. Very cool. And then last thing on the Quinton, I want to say I heard Robert Slovak, talk about that it was used way back in the day, like to fighting like cholera and like other, I don't want to say diseases, but infections, and people were using these Quinton minerals way back then for these therapeutic benefits.
It's in the pharmacopoeia. You could look into the history of it, and you'll see it used for all these different things. And primarily, it's because we are, as a modern race of humans, we are chronically deficient in minerals. And you see that people that are that live closer to the ocean, they tend to be more mineralized. You see it in their skin. You know, people that are out in the water every day, as long as they have a healthy, clean diet, you see that they're very elastic. You know, it's proper mineralization, and when you're talking about a whole periodic table of elements, there's minerals that we need that are in, you know, incredible trace amounts. Okay, and we don't know what those trace amounts are, but we know when it closely matches the blood, that's probably the ratio in which we need them. So so Quinton becomes a real no-brainer.
Yeah, and what I love too, just this whole conversation, one of the big themes I'm getting is just like the deuterium depletion, the Quinton, all these things have been like available for a long period of time, but it's like we lose them and we get so caught up in all these other biohacks or whatever, and it's like, dude, it's so simple. Like, just do this, you know?
Just do this. You know, ask the right questions and you get the right answers.
Yeah. I want to ask you a couple questions just about molecular hydrogen. Speaking of biohacks, so we've got deuterium depletion, which is probably number one on the list, right, of things if you're going to take control of your health. You've got the Quinton minerals, and now molecular hydrogen. So talk about that. You mentioned hydrogen many times when we were talking about deuterium depletion. So why would we want to get hydrogen in our bodies?
It's what everything runs on. So hydrogen makes up the bulk of the universe. It makes up the bulk of our bodies. When you look at it from molecular level, we're like 98 or 99% hydrogen. And hydrogen is that it's, you know, all food is broken down to create hydrogen, to spin the motors, to create ATP. Oversimplifying it, but you'll see in all processes, hydrogen is the fuel that's needed. And what is so amazing about hydrogen? Well, think about how small it is, right? Even compared to oxygen. It's the first element. It's the smallest thing there is, okay? And it's everywhere. It permeates everything. And it's got a proton and electron, which makes it pop. So it's this like, and it's everywhere. And that's what its role is. It's just to pop things. So it just pops everything, right? Pops everything into position. And so when you supplement with hydrogen, you're actually bypassing the whole process of eating, because you're everything that gets broken down to hydrogen. So you're giving yourself a main line of direct fuel. You know, it's hydrogen rockets. Hydrogen. The sun is powered by hydrogen. We're powered by hydrogen. Everything in the universe is powered by hydrogen, because it's that tiny little thing that permeates everything that goes pop.
Now, for hydrogen, you guys make a specific, and I've heard of hydrogen being like this selective antioxidant. It's not technically an antioxidant, but it's selective.
No, it's it's the most powerful antioxidant.
Oh, okay.
It really is the best antioxidant. It directly targets the hydroxyl free radical and turns it into water.
It's more of a signaling molecule. Is that how it works? It's signaling like certain pathways, the NRF2 pathway, and turning certain things on. Like you said, it pops, and like that signaling is telling the body.
Yeah, that's the ultimate signal. Pop. That's the ultimate signal. So signaling molecules can be oxidants, can be antioxidants are signaling molecules, oxidants are signaling molecules. These all have multifunctional. These all have different roles, you know. So even oxidants are super important because they also signal things. They're all signaling molecules.
Yeah. Okay.
But
So I was going to ask you. You know, you guys have a supplement where you can just take a tab and throw it in water and it makes molecular hydrogen. Now, I have, you know, some pretty smart friends, and they're like, Joel, what are you talking about? Hydrogen's everywhere. Like, how can this tab that's full of magnesium, I think it says like magnesium on the ingredients.
Here's the problem with hydrogen, okay? Here's not a problem, but here's a characteristic of hydrogen. Hydrogen doesn't really exist as a single atom. It exists, but you're bound to something, right? It's always bound to something. Hence water. So if it's bound to itself, it's gas. It's H2. Okay. So in that respect, there's hydrogen is everywhere, but it's bound. Okay. So you're not going to find free H2 just in the air. There'll be a little bit, but very, very small amount. Where else do you get hydrogen? Well, like I said, you break down all your food to create hydrogen. Where else? Your gut bacteria make hydrogen as a byproduct, which gives you usable hydrogen gas, which essentially what these supplements are doing. They're just giving you pure hydrogen gas. Now, the tablet doesn't produce hydrogen. It's a catalyst. It's a magnesium catalyst. So when you drop it in water, it causes the water to disassociate. You know, it basically burns, so to speak, and disassociates water into hydrogen and oxygen, and that hydrogen gas becomes dissolved in the water to a certain limit at 1 atmosphere. Okay, you can get hydrogen through electrolysis. You can make it through the proton exchange membrane. You can get it through dropping a pill to dissociate water. You can inhale. You can inhale it. You can drink it. But at the end of the day, it's all the same. It's dissolved hydrogen gas, but it's H2. It's bound as a gas to itself. It's not. It's, you know, as soon as it binds to something else, it becomes something else.
Do you personally like to do the gas inhalation as well, or do you supplement with any for your?
If I'm traveling, I have the tablets.
Yeah.
If I'm at home, I have a device that I can inhale hydrogen, and about 20 minutes on it, and you're saturated.
Nice.
And then or on our website we sell these simple little electrolysis units, like a little water bottle, and it'll make 1 to 3 ppm. It'll dissolve about 1 to 3 ppm hydrogen gas into the water.
Okay,
so that's these are all functional ways to increase hydrogen. Another way is to eat fermented foods, have a healthy microbiome, which will enable you to produce endogenous hydrogen. So these are all strategies to increase the hydrogen in our bodies, because if you're eating food to create hydrogen, why not supplement it with more hydrogen wherever you can get it?
Right.
You know, it's interesting. You people, I drink a lot of tea, and why is tea so popular around the planet? Well, it has to do with hydrogen. When you test it, actually you find out that the Camellia sinensis and the reaction, the science shows that if you measure it, you'll find that there's dissolved hydrogen in there.
Is there a specific tea?
I mean, I just get the highest quality tea that I like. I like Darjeeling tea.
Okay.
But tea is when I say tea, I mean specifically tea, Camellia sinensis, not herbal teas or stuff, but actually what is traditionally known as tea. And so again, when you ask the right questions, like why do these things are so, like fermented foods, like buttermilk, for example. Why did Eastern European people, you know, where I'm from Russia, why is buttermilk so important? You know, why is it so healthy? And then you come to find out that the bacteria in there produce an enormous amount of hydrogen gas. So it's again, it's simple. Maybe people didn't understand the science of what it was, but they found something that worked, and they stuck with it.
Yeah.
And now we're looking at it under a microscope, and we're going, oh, that's why, you know. And I love validation.
Yeah.
Validation is awesome.
I don't drink a lot of tea. I drink a lot of coffee. Is there hydrogen in coffee?
No, there isn't hydrogen in coffee,
Okay.
unfortunately. Yeah, I make a nice cup of coffee too. Put some MCT in there, some ghee,
Yeah.
some some butter, some raw butter, and yeah,
Yeah.
Coffee's good.
We could talk about hydrogen. I mean, there's that great
Well,
website.
okay, what I would like to do is anybody interested in hydrogen, I am not the authority on this by any means. I would refer people to Tyler LeBaron at the Molecular Hydrogen Institute.
Perfect.
And,
I was just
he
gonna
is
say
the
that.
world authority on hydrogen.
Yeah, he's got some great stuff, and I know he even just recently came out with a video, I think, talking about COVID, and there were some studies showing hydrogen therapy for COVID. So anybody wants to learn more about that and see some of the powerful effects of hydrogen, they can go check out his place.
If you want to if you want to get deep under the hood, and learn like the real science behind it, Tyler's the man.
Yeah, well said. I want to move into some lightning round questions, but before I do that, any exciting projects that you guys are working on right now? I mean, you're already doing a ton, but anything that's upcoming?
Yes, hyperbarics is going to be really important.
Ooh.
Another simple intervention that increases oxygen in the plasma by seven or more times. So hyperbarics is something we're going to be focused on in 2021. Again, what's important: hydrogen, oxygen, and the combination of those two, which is water. Sprinkle it with some minerals.
You got the recipe for longevity in life, everything.
Yeah, you got it all right there. It's the foundation, and it's the full genesis of it as well.
Very cool. I can't wait to see what you guys create then in 2021. It's gonna be awesome. You ready to hop into some lightning round questions? Actually, before we do that, one last one. Anything I didn't ask you that you wish I had?
How about it'll come to me later?
Okay. All right, let's jump into some lightning round questions. If the old you could see the new you, what would the new you say?
I would say listen to your intuition more. Cultivate patience, which I have. I would just tell myself sooner.
Yeah.
And I would say really just question everything, especially what doctors tell you.
Oh,
and
yeah.
So give the ultimate authority to yourself. How's that?
I love that, man. I can relate to everything you just said. What are some choices that you made that you think made you who you are today?
I think one of the most profound choices I made was to seek out people that I could learn from, that I could study under, educate myself on a one-to-one basis. I would just give a big shout out to all my teachers.
Yeah.
Because without them, you wouldn't really, I wouldn't have the foundation that I have today. And I think the thing that I kind of gave myself almost inadvertently was to teach myself or be in a position where I could be taught to learn how to learn. I think that we start out so much in life being indoctrinated into things that we just don't question at all. But if you actually have somebody that you are able to model excellence on, and that someone actually teaches you to learn how to learn, like critical thinking skills, then that is by far the most valuable most valuable crystal in your medicine bag.
I love that. That's great. You and the force behind Litewater, you guys are doing so many amazing things. I'm curious, just who inspires you in the health and wellness world?
I get inspired by some interesting, very learned people. Let's see. One would be Dr. David Jubb. He's a neurobehavioral physiologist, but in the late 70s, early 80s, when he was getting his PhD at NYU in neurobehavioral physiology, they had sent him to study all around the world with some of the most profound scientists, researchers, and thinkers, and he made it to the lab of one Gaston Naissons, and Gaston Naissons had this microscope that nobody else in the world had. It was Royal Rife had made one as well before him, and this was a super scope. And with this microscope, you're able to see much deeper than you can with any microscope. And because of that, he was able to get insights into biology that nobody else has been able to get through direct observation. So
Wow.
his insights into biologies are incredible, are profound, and I was fortunate enough to study with him. So mostly non-accessible to most people,
Yeah.
but the people that can follow, it's quite profound, his understanding into colloidal biology. And then so yeah, that's one person for sure. And then I have another colleague by the name of Linda Penny, and she's completely an energy healer. Okay, she's completely non-traditional. She just uses energy, and I don't know how, but it works. So that to me is something very profound. It's almost something that's 50 or 100 years or light years ahead of what anybody is doing now. So things like that is things of this esoteric nature really inspire me, because these are asking questions that we don't have answers for, and asking the right questions. So
I love that.
so and then another person would be Ananda Bozeman, and he just came up with a couple. He just released a couple books, the Unity Keys of Emmanuel, and All is God. And here's another person that inspires me, because he's so ahead of everybody, right? I'm a futurist. I'm looking for people that are holding something that will be embraced in the future. That are right now is like most people aren't noticing, and that's what I look for. It's like where are we at 50, 100 years from now, and who is talking about those concepts and that science? And so these three names that I mentioned are inspirational to me in that type of scenario. And,
Yeah, I
so,
love that.
yeah.
Thanks for sharing. Those are people that, like you said, I would have never heard of. So that's amazing.
Most people haven't, because they're not accessible to most people on that. I mean, they are, but they're not. You know, you have to be. It's like somebody that wants to learn about a particular type of math or a particular point in time of history. It's very specific. But when you, what makes it so specific is because they've really gone deep into something.
Yeah.
And that's what I value, is somebody that's really dived, like, you know, to the bottom of the ocean and has brought back pearls for you.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you if there's any books, if there's like, I know you mentioned a lot of research studies and papers, and maybe that would be it, but I'm a big reader. Is there any like 1 to 3 books that just stand out in your mind that had a huge impact in your life and kind of maybe the way you think?
The Rig Veda, it's the oldest book in existence that we know, and there's a translation by David Frawley. He's a Sanskrit scholar, and it's one of those books that's like, well, it's originally in Sanskrit, right? And I've seen a few different translations, and this is one he wrote 30 years ago, and I think he's the best Sanskrit translator there is. I took the language in college.
Wow.
And why would this book inspire me, or anybody? Well, one, it's the oldest text that we know on this planet, for one. It's the oldest book there is. And when you read it and you see how poetic it is and how many levels of meaning it has, you know, in Hawaiian there's this term called ka'ona, which means hidden levels of meaning. Okay, and this hidden level of meaning, the superficial level is accessible to all. Second level is if you have a key to that level. And the more keys you have, the more levels you can unlock of meaning to something. So it becomes this multi-dimensional gift that's from antiquity, from the beginning of time, that is still speaking to us, a living text. So it's just something you have on the shelf as a reference, and you read it and see maybe today I'll get something more out of it than I did yesterday. And sure, as I picked this book up early on in life, and every time I open it, it seems like I get something deeper on it, and that's such a great metaphor for life, because life is like this book that we have. We've been entrusted with this book, and did you leave it on the coffee table? Did you put it on the shelf? Did you study it incessantly morning to night? What did you do with this book that you were given? Because at some point you're going to have to give it back to the cosmic library. It's only on loan. So I like the Rig Veda.
That's huge. Yeah.
little plug for the oldest book in existence.
Yeah, the book I Am That is kind of, for me, that's kind of something, one of those books that I have to keep coming back to, and I feel like every time I read it, and it's a different, it like you said, it puts me at a different level. I have to continually though read it.
Anything that you can continually extract something out of is a living text, because it's informing you of it's giving you what you need in the moment that you need it.
Yeah.
So it's that's a living thing.
Yeah. Any rituals or hacks or practices that you do on a kind of regular basis?
Well, I started off in yoga in my early 20s, so some of the most important, the most important foundational yoga practice that I learned in my early 20s, I still do on a daily basis, and that's Nauli. And Nauli, you can look it up. It has to do with churning of your intestines and the creating like a vacuum in the pelvic floor, and that stimulates all kinds of things. It's the center of your body, so it stimulates digestive fire, and if you don't have a fire, then you don't have much else. So you keep that. You basically keep that fire in your gut healthy, and you do this through the proper breath and ujjayi breathing, and you do that through even if you don't get through a whole asana practice, or you're going to do yoga. In fact, most people that practice yoga, they skip this first step, which is the Uddiyana Bandha, so look it up, Uddiyana Bandha followed by Nauli, and that is, if you're anybody that's everybody should be doing this, because this is the gut health is brain health. So if you don't have gut health, you don't have brain health, and this is a mechanical exercise that came to us by the first biohacker, which is Shiva, and basically Shiva gave us all these simple tools of anti-aging and longevity, and on a practical sense, and spiritual enlightenment at the esoteric sense. So that's what I like to practice, and I know that, and I know that when everything's working right, then that's my blessing.
I want you to, a couple more questions and then we'll wrap it up. I wanted you to finish this sentence. 2020 was a tough year for a lot of people, so let's reframe it. 2020 was the greatest gift because ...
2020 was the greatest gift because I turned more people onto Deuterium Depletion.
Love it. Boom. That's great. Last but not least, Victor, where can people find you and the good folks at Litewater?
DrinkLitewater.com. Litewater spelled Litewater, so DrinkLitewater.com. DeuteriumTest.com. That's DEUTERIUM test.com. You can reach us there. Myself, I'm not so much on social media, but you can anybody's free to contact me. So you can do it through my company, and I've written quite a bit of articles, some books, a lot of information, podcasts now. So I'm pretty accessible if anybody has a question.
Awesome. Victor, thank you for being on the show. Victor from Litewater, thank you so much, man.
Thank you. This was great. Thank you very much.